All right, then. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Deep bow to everybody who's present, especially all of the kind and generous people who able to be here in the Discord and to share their camera, so we can see each other. We can experience the joy of being in community and being in community with people who are also on the path, also interested in meditation and Zen and the truth and reality and compassion. And there's just so much that we have an opportunity to make use of together. Um, I see Austin and Sela and Hazley and Nicole, Mike, Lydia, and Jonathan and Sonia and Stephanie and Cleo and Drew, Karuna, Maggie, Monifa, and Shiny. So there's not so much that needs to be said, really, but there is a lot to enjoy about being together in community, being in the present moment, and there's a feeling of support, non-transactional support, when we are together with community. And sometimes people say that there is human beings are inherently selfish, right, or are inherently self-serving, but actually we're more generous than anything else, right? We care for one another in a way where not a necessity for any kind of transaction or exchange, right? Our babies don't have to pay rent. And we also don't have to pay rent to be here. We don't need to do anything or buy anything or sell anything to get this nourishment from our mindfulness. The truth of the present moment, or the ever new impermanent nature, or the fresh mind, the reality mind here in the present moment, is just as true as death, right? And just because death is very true and very real and can hit us at any time, we're we're not really overwhelmed by that somehow. And in the same way, even though this present moment direct experiencing that does not rely on intellectual thought and does not rely on any quality or sense of a separate self entity, still we can miss it. Very easy to miss it, to forget about it. And yet here it is, right? Just as true as the sun in the sky, just as true as that we as a human being, we came out of a womb. We didn't come out of a tree. And we don't really need to do anything to be in relationship with that. It's kind of our birthright. It's our inheritance. So we can surely say that we come together to look at some Buddhist teachings,
You're
to,
muted, Bante.
well, how did that happen? Am I muted? Okay. It's very strange, right? Imagine if we were all sitting together in person, right? We're all sitting in the room together, and then someone speaks up and says, "But Bante,
Can't
no,
hear you.
you're not making noise with your mouth, right?" Um, that would be a very strange situation, and yet here we are. So it's not that we come here only for Buddhism or for meditation or to feel good, but it's also that we show up to embrace our strangeness and embrace the sufferings that are there. Right? Thich Nhat Hanh says, "No mud, no lotus." Without that mud, without that suffering, we won't have a happiness. Without that trauma, that fear, that worry, we won't have freedom either. We won't have that feeling of safety and warmth and capacity to heal. So we're not here to avoid anything or get rid of anything or cut anything out. But every time that we show up to this space, certainly how I approach it, I need to make sure that my body is comfortable. This isn't a time for me to practice my push-ups or my pull-ups or something like that, right? Or to do elongated stretching or to endure, right? To sit in a particular position, the right meditation position. There's no such thing as a right meditation position. This is a conspiracy theory. Okay? Half lotus, full lotus, whatever it is, it's fine. The right meditation position is just to be comfortable, just to be able to enjoy the position that you're in. If you can do that, then that is the right meditation position. That's the suitable meditation position. You don't need to be a yoga instructor. You don't need to fold your body in a particular way like that. You don't even need to be sitting. You don't even need to be still. You can practice this freely. You can come home to this at any time, any place, because you cannot be separate from it. Just like you cannot be separate from your breathing. So it doesn't need to be some kind of enlightenment. Right? We don't need to fixate on, how can I become enlightened? How can I reach this reified state, this special state, this ultimate state? It's more than enough to breathe and to know that you're breathing, to connect with your breathing. But for a lot of people, it's not accessible for them. They can't work with that. So Buddhism over time became, in certain cultures, in certain places, a religion of encouraging people to do good deeds, sometimes explicitly to a particular group's benefits or detriments. Okay. But we don't need to practice it that way, making donation or chanting for some bodhisattva or building temples or serving people or seeing a monk or a guru as higher than us or above us. We can really practice with this present moment breathing in and of itself as a joy, as a truth, as an insight, the insight into the joy of breathing. And then as that kind of self-conflictory mind comes up, right, that mind that has something to say about everything and is critical and cynical and skeptical, etc. We just notice it and don't take it so seriously, and we come back to our breathing, that reality, that nourishment, and it's not a feel-good thing. I hope that you feel good, and I hope that you have a lot of methods for feeling good, but this connecting with your breath is an empowerment, right? It's a wisdom. It's and not about feeling good. You don't need to feel good to enjoy your breathing or to recognize how precious your breathing is, how wonderful it is, how valuable it is. But in the midst of this joy and this wonderfulness called life, this very interestingness of life itself, there is a lot that we are fixated on. There is a lot that we grab onto. There is a lot that we really get knotted up about. And you can't just take a bunch of DMT or ayahuasca and fix that. Okay, let alone some opiates or cigarettes or whatever coping mechanisms that we have to deal with this knot of suffering that we have. You can't just consume something. You can't just, or even have this big special meditation experience and now your knots are all unclear. It's not reasonable for most of us that way. But what you can do, and even that way, you may become self-fixated about it. Now you're this enlightened person running around causing trouble for people. Who cares if you're enlightened? Don't be anything, but be alive in not being anything. So what we can practice is not to get something and not to practice something to get something, but we can offer out. We can practice generosity. We can consider about this release of what we hold on to. That's detachment. But you should try to work with it in whatever way you can work with it. The position that your body is in right now, well, offer that out, release that, change it. The state of depression that you're in your room, it's dark in your room, you're huddled up into one corner of the bed, you can't wake up, what have you, hungover, offer it out in not any one particular direction, but just to abandon and to offer out. Go for a walk, release, refresh, restart. And we can also practice that by doing good deeds. We can also practice that by generosity, acts of generosity. We can practice it according to our, willingness to be aware of this knot, but not try to grasp it, not trying to fix it or solve it, but to offer it out. In this way, our breath can be this way, this methodology of releasing and offering out, not to be fixated on anything, any place, any time, any experience. It's like you're holding on to something very valuable. You're holding on to a bar of gold, right? I've never held on to a bar of gold, but I think we can imagine that, right? It's so valuable, it's so precious to you. It's your bar of gold, and yet you can just give it away. So this is the power of our detachment. This is the power of our generosity. This is the power of our offering out, our blessing out, is that we can release what we are stuck on. Just like we can release our breathing, even though it's so precious. It's so wonderful. Each and every breath more precious than the last, right? Because your last breath, it was very valuable and it got you to where you are now, but it's not as valuable as the one you're taking right now. Couldn't be. So, in this way, we can practice without any particular goal or expectation or ideation or even a particular method. But within that, there's not a goal, there's not a particular method, there's not a particular path that we're going along, to get more advanced or to this next level. But within that, we can make use of drinking water, we can make use of breathing, we can make use of listening to the beautiful music or singing along with the beautiful music. We can make use of a metta, meditation, loving kindness practice. We can make use of anything, everything, right? And in the same way that we have this mindset of I will not give my bar of gold to anyone. I will not give my Audi to anyone, period. And this guy's not going to convince me of it. This monk guy, he's trying to get my Audi. He's trying to get my bar of gold, right? But the power of that is that we can just give it away. And in the same way, with our self fixation, our self story, our trauma, our attachment, it's not to reject it, but it's actually an act of generosity to offer out, right? To give away, to free, to release. And somehow that bar of gold keeps getting put back in our hand. That anxiety, that depression, that particular view of ourselves, that created truth keeps getting put back in our hands. Well, what a gift. Because now we can learn how to be skillful in giving up, in giving away, in offering out. We don't need to be stuck. We don't need to be locked in. Because we can become more and more skillful in offering out, in letting go. So that every one of our suffering, our difficulty, pain in the body, that we get into a funk, a good funk or a bad funk, whatever it might be. And there's this capacity to put it down, to put down the burden. But that putting down doesn't mean that the bar of gold isn't there anymore, or that our suffering isn't there anymore, or our attachment isn't there anymore. But it means that we have a capacity to be with it in this way of freedom, in this way of joy, this way of refreshing and restarting. Someone asked me recently of how to be fearless. And, that's something I deal with sometimes. This feeling of fear or dread comes up. And fear is fear, right? Scariness is scary. And there's no way to get around that. It's like pain is painful. But it comes up for me the story of the original Zen master Bodhidharma, the original Chan master Bodhidharma, and this disciple said, I need your help. I need you to purify my mind. I need you to release, to untangle my mind. I need you to get rid of my fear. I'm a very fearful person. I want to be fearless. I need you to help me get rid of this. Okay. And this original Zen master said, okay, show me your fear. Show me your mind, your entangled mind, and I will purify it. I will liberate it. And the disciple said, when I look for my mind, I can't find it. So in the looking itself, in the not finding itself, we resolve the problem. And even more to the point, where is the problem now? Where is your mind now? To get involved with that, you know, you can write an anthology, right? A trillion-page anthology about your fear and your worry and this situation and this experience that you went through. But what is that compared to the present moment? Nothing, not even real. It is empty. The moment that you get stuck or fixated in a particular thing that you need to do or need to not do or avoid or go towards, you're stuck, you're lost, you're going to fail. You're not going to be able to continue. So it's not about what we grasp and what we get, but it's how can we release what we already have? And we keep more and more things coming up that we already have, we grasp onto, we get stuck on. So, how to release that? Let's try to practice this together. Make sure that your body is really comfortable, really in a lovely, wonderful position. And as you find that lovely, quite wonderful position, and bring your awareness to the body as a whole sitting here, the presence of your body, starting to notice that and look at that here in the present moment. You may find a feeling in the foot or the stomach or in your breathing. Maybe you have a headache. Maybe there's some tension that you notice. But through your act of deep and sincere breathing, especially at the beginning of meditation or when we encounter difficulty, we can breathe deeply and sincerely. feeling that energy of mindfulness, that power of your presence coming into the body. Just being more and more aware of the state of the body in the here and now. Somehow we can recognize that our body is really, really important to us, really, really precious to us, and that through our breathing, we get to be with our body in a totally non judgmental way. We get to fully be with ourselves in this way of enjoyment, and there's no intellect involved with this. Your body being like this or like that or whatever. It's the experience of the body. It's not your idea of the body. Your idea about the body is just doesn't matter. Nonsense at this point. Because using your attention, your presence, breathe sincerely and breathe with a depth. Feel the breath deep in the body. Just breathing and noticing the body breathing. And this is a practice. If you are trying to get a certain state or get a certain experience out of this, then your practice is going to be so limited, right? But this is a limitless practice because there's no goal, there's nothing to grasp out of it. But it's this awareness itself. It's as if we are breathing in awareness and offering that awareness out into our whole body with a lot of love and a lot of enjoyment. And we don't allow a particular pain or a particular difficulty to encumber us because it's the noticing itself that we're coming back to, not the propagation of difficulty, of like and dislike, of preference. It's the noticing itself, the releasing itself, refreshing itself that we're putting paramount, be primary. And that's a joy to feel a stomach ache or to feel a worry, right? We have some situation in our life that we're worried about. My goodness. And yet, with this practice, we don't need to worry about it because it's the awareness itself, it's the noticing itself, and it's very active, it's authentic, and it's very true as well. The noticing itself, it's bringing us to reality. The main factors that are qualifying this as a meditation and that you're working with it in the proper way is there's a sense of curiosity and there's a sense of enjoyment. And we go in that direction of that person, that place, that experience, that thinking, etc. We go in that direction and then we turn the mind around. Come back to our breathing in this interest and this curiosity of the present moment experiencing. And in some sense, we take responsibility for the caretaking of this body and the relax and the gentle of this body and the attending to of this body. There's so much to enjoy in the body just sitting here, breathing and aware, deeply aware by moment. But don't sink, don't fall into any particular state. It's as if there's something that's so enjoyable and so wonderful. You don't want to fall asleep. You don't want to fall into a torpor or stupor, stumbling around. You certainly don't want to get anxious about it or too worked up about it, but just to breathe and be aware of the body sitting here and to enjoy fully and wholeheartedly. Just sitting, breathing, fully aware, fully here. Breathe as deeply as you need to, and you can also stretch out or stand up or lay down or walk slowly. Any of that's okay. None of that's a problem, but you don't need to do that either. Even if the body feels a little bit uncomfortable or the mind feels a little bit uncomfortable, you don't need to change your position. You don't need to breathe in a different way. But you can, that's also possible. just sitting, breathing, aware. Whatever thought or feelings may come to mind or body, sensations, to breath, not only as this practice of meditation, but also as a completely new mind, new experience. That's where the aliveness comes in, so that we aren't falling into any trance. If you want to go to sleep, it's okay. If you want to feel very relaxed, it's okay. But we want to emphasize the freshness and the aliveness of this practice that is freeing. And is not self-fixated, not sinking or falling into anything in particular. We can also practice to experiment with our breathing. So we don't need to breathe in one particular way that we feel is suitable, but actually our meditation is an ongoing experimentation where we look from different angles in different ways of how to show up fully and how to stay in this way of showing up that does not rely on judgment, cognitive thinking, the intellect. It doesn't rely on someone or some place or some time, but that it is quite dynamic and fresh, creative and experimental. It's open. So, I'm going to read a few lines from this book called Zen Under the Gun. And that's the moment you want to be Zen, right? But that's also the most difficult moment to be Zen when we are encountering these difficulties in our daily life. And, we have the good conditions to practice together. So we're not really under the gun, kind of in the field of flowers, the field of merit. Find ourselves here is very good conditions. And what we're going to read about is some of these Zen teachings and see what we can get from them. Maybe there's some insight, maybe there's some wisdom in here. And yeah, just kind of listen open-heartedly. And if you have a question or a comment, then you can share it and bring it up. And I might have a few things to say, maybe not. But we'll listen to some of these teachings, okay? So this is from a Zen master named Heng Xuan. I'm sure that's not exactly how to pronounce his name. And Heng Xuan lived from 1222 to 1289. Okay. And in southeast China. Okay. This is a teaching on fundamental mind. And it's nice to have this understanding that, you know, for an American person or even a Western person, an Australian person or a New Zealander, what, you know, someone who's in this, I don't know, maybe has the ancestry with the colonizers. The 1200s are very difficult to imagine. What do you mean from the 1200s? You know, you're reading words from a monk in the 1200s. It doesn't quite make sense. But here, this is the ancient Chinese. So they've had the language is kind of somewhat continuous for many hundreds of years, you know, 1,000 years. So we can kind of get these teachings from this ancient Zen master in a quite a direct way. So let's start with this reading. Fundamental Mind. Venerable Master Huang Shan said, "We should just know where our own minds are born." Okay, I'm going to add a commentary. Where is your mind born? That's a question. Okay, when they say, when your supervisor at Amazon comes along and says, it's been 16 minutes. Where are you? Where have you been? Your break was for 15 minutes. Get back on the clock. You can ask them, you should tell them, we should just know where our minds are born. And then you say, where is your mind born? But unless you mean it, unless you're sincere about it, then it doesn't carry any weight. You're just talking nonsense, right? So it's not the words themselves, but it's our sincerity, it's our contemplativeness, it's our questioning, it's our curiosity. It's not our intellect. What's worse than, you know, someone who's so attached to their intellect, talking about this and that? Go and make a good computer, something that works. Stop talking to me, right? Be practical. Right? It's the worst. Unless we like that person, then maybe anything they say we like to hear. So fundamental mind. Zen master Huang Xuan said, we should just know where our own minds are born. If we know where mind is born, then we will know where mind functions 24 hours a day. If we know where it functions 24 hours a day, then we know where it has functioned for countless ages. So where is the mind born? Anyone have an answer for this? Where is the mind born?
In the present moment?
Anyone have a different answer?
The mind is born in the mind.
Well, a cat is born in a cat, but I don't think that's what Heng Xuan is talking about here.
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
That's okay. There's no wrong answer. In this universe, cats are born from cats. In another universe, cats come from trees, right? Cats grow in trees. Tucker, do you have an answer? Where is the mind born?
Hi, Bante, and everybody. For me, I guess it depends what kind of mind. Uh, so when I first heard it, I thought of like a mind that is experiencing craving, and that comes from a pleasant experience. To want that experience more, a mind arises out of that experience, or an unpleasant feeling causes craving to get away from that. Uh, yeah.
3 answers and 3 no's. Okay, we cannot say what the mind is. The mind is unknowable, ungraspable, right? It's like a telescope looking at itself. Doesn't make sense. So mind here, I think the mind was born in the present moment is quite good, reasonable, right? The body is kind of comes into being at this present moment. If things stop going in the right way in the mind or in the body, then it falls apart, right? If this one, this chromosome doesn't meet that chromosome or it doesn't maintain itself in the present moment, then the entire body will dissolve, right? And then that will correlate to what we usually think of as the mind. But here, maybe we can see mind as awareness itself. Not mind, because we're talking about mind in a self-fixated way. But here, Heng Xuan is talking about a mind that is not related to a particular person at a particular time, because this is just in the realm of dualistic thinking or conceptual thinking. So maybe we see the mind as awareness itself. So we should just know where awareness itself is born. I think it's quite reasonable, right? It's born in the present moment, or because it even goes beyond that, right? It's even beyond the present moment, because the present moment is containing and interrelated with the past and the future moments, everything. So we couldn't even call it the present moment, actually. So Heng Xuan said, we should just know where our minds are born. If we know where mind is born, then we will know where mind functions 24 hours a day. If we know where it functions 24 hours a day, then we know where it has functioned for countless ages. So this mind is the mind of Abraham Lincoln. When Abraham Lincoln gave his speech, this is the mind that was functioning. This is the awareness itself that was functioning. When a cat uses a litter box, 100 years ago, 100 years in the future, this is where the mind is arising. This is where the mind exists and has existed for countless ages. But we can say awareness itself in the present moment. I think that's reasonable. So Heng Xuan goes on here. This is why all the Buddhas came forth. They wanted to awaken us to our fundamental mind. This they considered the ultimate. So to point out the truth, to point out the fundamental rather than the perceptional. Okay, what appears, right? What we have a perception of, but actually what is fundamental, what's at the ground, right? So what is at the ground of a tree? Well, it's interbeing. That's what's at the ground of a tree. You can point out a tree and say, "Oh, that's a tree. It's got roots, it's got the soil, etc." But you just have to go on and on and on into infinitum, into infinity. The root of a tree is interbeing. The root of the mind, okay, we can say present moment awareness. We can say the root of mind is no mind. We can say the root of our mind, in whatever way you want to look at it or consider about it, is the fundamental mind rather than our perceptional mind or our mind of likes and dislikes. If you can be like this, then all at once you pay back in full the benevolence of the enlightened teachers of the past. You don't have to do anything else. If you do other things, these things belong to the plane of contrived action. How could they be enough to repay uncontrived benevolence? The rock of ages will wear through someday, but the Lord's benevolence is exhaustible. If you can be like this, if you can recognize your fundamental mind, if you can recognize the mind of present moment, non-dualistic awareness, non-conceptual awareness. Not how can I get into meditation with, 5 hertz guided meditation, and get into this deep special state or whatever, this neural state, but how can you recognize the fundamental mind? How can you see, experience present moment awareness? And in doing that, you pay back all of your all of the debt that you've owed from contrived action, from unskillful activity, right? From all the benefits that you've received from these enlightened teachers, these wonderful people. You don't need to, do all these things, but actually, most important is to realize the fundamental mind. Not a calculated effort to do good or win merit by helping others. So to abandon calculation, okay, is also a part of this this fundamental mind, is that it's not calculated. It is free of calculation. It's free of contrivance of any form, of any sort. Okay. So we will finish with this. How can we say anything? Right? How can we say anything? The Venerable Master Huang Shan said, intelligence, sharp wits, conceptual consciousness, thinking and interpreting, these are the root of birth and death. And in Buddhism, this is seen as the major issue that we're kind of going through, is that we're coming into being again and we're dying again, and we're going in and out of this cycle of suffering and complicatedness and higher realms and lower realms, and it's exhausting and it's miserable. Coming into being, going out of being, coming into being, going out of being. It's just, it's miserable. Gui Shan asked Yang Shan, all phenomena are transcendent. How can we say anything? Right? So all phenomena, all sensations, all experiences, all, every tree, every trailer, every Buddha image is transcendent. It's just refreshing and restarting limitlessly. Okay? It's ayahuasca without the side effects. Everything you see, everything you touch and you breathe and you know is this renewal and this healing. If you recognize the fundamental mind, okay? If you recognize where the mind has abided for countless ages. So, Guishan asked Yangshan, all phenomena are transcendent, healing, nourishing, refreshing, restarting. Okay? All phenomena are transcendent, entry points to freedom. Okay? Guishan asked Yangshan, all phenomena are transcendent. How can we say anything? So recognizing that every phenomena, every thing we see, everything we hear, everything we breathe, right? And you need to be careful not to get too excited about all this stuff because you can work yourself up, and that's not the point. All right. So if everything's like this, how can we say anything? Right? How can anything be said when everything is so transcendent? As Yangshan was about to open his mouth, so Yangshan was about to respond, Guishan gave a shout. Ha! It's not a very good shout. Guishan asked this question 3 times, and every time Yangshan tried to answer, he got shouted at. Right? And this is 2 very sincere, very real monks. They're not playing games here in this way that they're acting. So, with his head bowed and in tears, Yangshan said, Baizang told me I'd have to meet more people of the path to succeed. Today, I've met one. Hang Xuan gave a shout and said, what you're doing is the root of birth and death. So, Guishan here is to communicate all phenomena being transcendent. And when Yangshan tries to open his mouth and to respond to that or to answer the question, Guishan gives a shout. So you can say Guishan gives a reminder. All phenomena are transcendent. How can you say anything? So with his head bowed and in tears, Yangshan said, Baizang told me I'd have to meet more people of the path to succeed. Today I've met one. So this is to meet someone. Goes back to that uncontrived benevolence. The benevolence of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, enlightened teachers, in communicating the teaching of enlightenment is a spontaneous outflow of their enlightened wisdom, not a calculated effort to do good or win merit by helping others. So, meeting these kinds of people on the path that are not contrived and not relying on the intellect, not relying on promoting some self-fixation, free of it and expressing openly from that freedom without calculation. We have to meet those people and develop our faith and our understanding. And there's a lot of teachings in Zen about this. You have to meet someone. You have to come in contact with someone who's had an enlightenment experience or, has made a relationship with not knowing, with not relying on calculatedness, not relying on some place, some time, someone, so that you can also feel that faith to continue. We kind of need that to succeed. Because that fundamental mind that has existed throughout ages is also this mind. Okay, your mind. It's a shared, not separate at all. Heng Xuan gave a shout and said, "What you're doing is the root of birth and death." Heng Xuan gave a shout. Okay, this is the note. Perceiving that his listeners were busy trying to figure out the Zen story he'd just told them, a story meant to interrupt this approach. What you're doing is the root of birth and death. Do not try to understand it. Do not try to grasp it. All right, this will be the final line, and we'll wrap up with chanting. So we walk together. Heng Xuan said, "Stepping through heaven's gate and smashing it, it's far-reaching, open, and empty. I join hands with you, and we walk together. If suddenly someone asks, 'What is Buddha?' it's the one who steps through heaven's gate and smashes it." I'll read that one more time. Venerable Master Huangshan said, "Stepping through heaven's gate and smashing it, it is far-reaching, open, and empty. I join hands with you and we walk together. If suddenly someone asks, 'What is Buddha?' it is the one who steps through heaven's gate and smashes it." Okay. We'll finish up with just a little bit of Buddhist chanting, and the chanting that we will do is in Pali language. It's very short. You're welcome to follow along if you know it, to chant along with me on your end. So it goes, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Do that 3 times. And then at the very end, it's a sadhu. And that's a sadhu 3 times. Okay? And at least you can join in for the sadhu at the end of 3 times. Easy to chant along with that. And the meaning of this is that we kind of lift up the Buddha. Who's the Buddha? Well, there's a Zen master who said, the Buddha is 3 pounds of flax, or the Buddha is a pile of shit. So we can say that. But, the golden Buddha behind me is not to be worshipped, and certainly not made of gold, but it's to be an example of what we lift up and what we put high in our lives, what we remember in our lives, what we come back to in our lives, and that is virtue, right? That's being a good person. That's being simple, stable, wholesome. And at the end of the day, it's being woke AF. Actually, factually woke, right? And that's what the Buddha represents. So this chant is about to lift up our recognition of the Buddha, not only the historical Buddha who became enlightened, but actually that enlightenment quality in ourselves, so that we don't waste our time, but we crash through heaven's gate, right? Most people think even to not waste your time, you're trying to go to heaven. But as a practitioner, as a Buddhist, someone on this kind of self-realization path, heaven isn't enough. Enlightenment is enough to wake up from all attachment to any particular realm, any particular someone who's in some particular place. Okay, so I invite everyone to bring their hands together, and we will chant this Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hope you will join with me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Sadhu. Sukhi Hotu, may we all be well, happy, and peaceful. And please rejoice in your merits and your goodness for doing this activity. Take it easy, take it simple, and hope to see you again soon. All right, thank you for being here.